All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I'm your host, Damon Pistulka, and I am excited because with me today, I've got Brad Smith from Steller Insight, and we're going to be talking about improving a business sale or succession with growth. Brad, awesome to have you here today.
Good to be here. That's a fun adventure you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is a fun adventure. So, Brad, let's talk a little bit about Brad to get started here, man, because you got an interesting past. You've been an executive coach for a little while now, and but the interesting part is, how do you go from being a chemist and working at HP and doing things with, crazy things with wafer and all this kind of stuff, and going to executive coaching?
Well, so the long-term view is I watched my dad start 34 companies as I was growing up and kill 30 of them because he was a product development guy. So he raised me to be a chemical engineer. I was like, I think that way. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I got within a term of a degree in biochemistry and then stopped because I said, not doing that. I don't like to write for a living.
Yep.
I like to deal with people. So I went back and finished in business management and MBA in marketing and finance. So I'd have the tools. If I'd been doing that, my dad probably would have only started 9, but 9 of them would still be running instead of 3, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've got 30 ways to kill a company in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
So when I work with people, so when you have a chemistry process, you're looking for a specific end result. You put things in the beaker, you do an experiment one at a time, you change a single parameter at a time. You turn the heat up, you put a little more salt in, whatever you're doing, right? You change one parameter at a time and you measure the results. So if you go after business the same way and you want a specific result, one of the things you do is, okay, if your intent is 5 years from now, when I get to a certain age, I'm going to sell my business. Why would people buy a business that was losing money? Why would people buy a business that was flat for 15 years? They're going to be excited because of the potential for themselves. Buying a company is a selfish process, right? You buy a company that is consistently growing. And what I like to do with my clients is to step in with them, look at every aspect of the business, tweak all the parts, and finish the process. So if I can go in and say you're growing at 20% a year for the last 5 years, right? I've got a client like that right now. You go in, you tweak everything that's there, look at all the gaps that are there, and at the end of the year, you're growing at twice that. So 20% to 40%, that's significant.
Yes.
But when you work at that for a period of time, you build up a process so that people can look at that and say, oh, I've got 3 years of consistent 40% growth. I'm willing to pay this for it. And the person, so I have an example, right? I had a client, he came to me, he said, I'm part of a group, we're doing this, I'm not getting what I need. So I started coaching him, and we went from the 3.5 million he'd done the year before, 3.6, I think. And the next year he was at 6.8. Okay. The following year he was at 9.3. Am I remembering the right numbers? Maybe 9.6. And then the following year after that, he was at 12.8. 3 years, right? We'd taken him by a factor of 4. But the following year after that, he only went from 12.8 to, so I stopped working with him, 12.8 to 13.3. But with all the things I taught him and the restructuring of literally the whole business, he was at 13.3, but had multiplied his net profit by a factor of 5.
Yeah.
Why would you build a business? But that takes skills, insight. So essentially, I trained whole companies and the leaders to learn how to tool themselves for consistent, steady ferocious growth. What are the limitations around though? You've got money limitations, you've got people limitations, you've got structural production limitations.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a service industry, then you've got people training issues, right? So train them for hiring, training. So everybody talks about having a pipeline for their sales. Almost nobody thinks about having a pipeline for their employees, their talent. The
Yes.
talent pipeline is huge.
Yeah.
And you start that by looking at what's on the plate of the CEO and having them. Obviously, I've got this process pretty well drilled down, but
yeah,
you look at everything that's on your plate. This is homework. Everybody that's listening, look at your entire plate. What do you do? Whatever it's a week, whether it's a month, doesn't matter, and put a number of hours to it. And then you look at all the things you have really zero business doing, and you figure out how you're going to pay for the person that can do that better than you. You bring them in, you hire them, you take their talent, you train them up to do things the way you need them done, and you turn them loose. And you check on them on a regular basis. Like everybody ought to do that, right? There's a single thing everybody misses. Almost everybody, of the hundreds of people that I've talked to, business owners I've talked to, one company hired with a specific process for looking at character. One boggled me, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Nobody else was doing it. So when you hire, you start with what are the results that need to be done? What are the tasks that need to be done to get the results? What are the skills that are needed in order to do the tasks, in order to get the results? And what character makes those effortless?
What character makes those effortless?
Right.
Those tasks, getting those tasks on there. Yeah.
Right. If you're hiring a bookkeeper, the key question, I love this part. There's a key characteristic that each kind of level needs, right? For a bookkeeper, what's the key detail? Details, right? I want this to go around the world.
Yeah.
You ask them, do you lose socks in the laundry? Because if you naturally don't lose socks in the laundry and you've trained your whole family to not lose socks in the laundry, you've got management dialed and you've got detail dialed. Isn't that amazing?
Do you lose socks in the laundry?
Right?
That's funny.
Here's another big one. We have a whole generation, bless them, of people that have almost no work ethic. That's a rampant thing in the country. But when you're interviewing, how do you ask them if they have work ethic? You can't ask them that. They'll say, yes, I have it, right? No, you ask them, who taught you how to work and how old were you?
Yeah.
And then you ask them what their first paid job was and how old they were. And if they're young, you're good. If they're, oh, I didn't get my first job until I graduated from college.
Yeah.
Then you got to test them for about 6 months.
Yeah.
Isn't that? But that's just like, it took me probably 2 months working with a client of mine trying to figure out how do I hire people that have work ethic? And we finally stumbled into that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really, there's just different kinds of work ethic too, because we're running into a situation now that you or I have never seen before, in the fact that there's 5 generations in the workplace now.
Right.
And then to top it off, Christina Harrington, a friend of mine, shared an article, I don't know, a few weeks ago about being that you and I are native analog, but the workplace is, the majority of people in the workplace now are native digital people.
Yep.
So that we have to think about, not only are we trying to communicate with people in their 20s all the way into their 50s, 60s and beyond, we have now people that prefer analog conversation and people that prefer digital conversation, which is completely different.
Right.
And that's a lot of the things that we see in these companies now, especially in older established companies, is that they've built themselves on being naturally analog companies. The leaders are still naturally analog people, and but this middle management and some of the executive leaders are now transitioning to the are natural native analog people, and were run, founded, and started by that. And as you move over time, some of these companies have to develop more digital, and it's really becoming a challenge, I think.
Well, there's a problem with digital in that you don't build depth of trust.
Yes.
And so what has to happen is you have to compensate for that by having face-to-face conversations. You can train people into that, right?
Yeah.
But it's repetition. It takes 72 repetitions of a single letter for a child to learn a single letter. Letter B, letter C, right? 72 times, right? Minimum. And so in order to get somebody, fortunately, adults don't need 72 repetitions in order to build a habit. But if you build a habit of, okay, we're going to talk this way, then you can build them into the analog and build them into it. But it's not the analog or digital. What's necessary is the depth. Do you trust them? At what point do you trust them? Or what point do they trust you? So rapport and trust are the keys.
Yeah. That's a great point around that. We'll come back to that too. So if one of the things that you said in your profile I was reading, it says, if you have an unrelenting itch for excellence, you might be a good candidate to work with me. What's that about? What's that about?
I love to work with people that have ambition.
Yeah.
You know, the most disappointing thing is to wake up and find out I have more ambition for my clients than they do. That's kind of a waste of my time anymore. So
100%.
if they've got an unrelenting itch for excellence, it means that they're constantly wanting to learn and do more and produce more, right? Those are great clients for me. I look at myself as a catalyst for that itch, if you would.
All right. Catalyst for the itch to be better. I write a lot of notes, so we can ask.
Well, let's say it this way. One of the things that I do is I have there's a values list on my website. You can go to it, you can download it. Yeah, you got to put your email in, but download it, print it off, look at all the things that are important to you, mark them, print it off, mark them, right? And then rank yourself on them. And when you rank yourself on them, then figure out who you want to be next year. Because you have a whole 12 months to grow to it, right? Write it down. One of the things I ask people is, when was the last time you told a white lie? Those sneaky little things around the edges. Nobody ever says never. And so what you're saying is, and then you ask them, well, do you have integrity? And they say, oh, yeah, right. But you just said you'd lie once in a while. Yeah. So if you want to grow, then you got to put that. When I built this process in 1999, put a particular value at the top of your pile and run all your decisions through that. And that way you've got an understanding of who that makes you be. And if that repetitive process, right? Repetitive process puts it deeper into you. If integrity is your goal, then have it be absolute. If stuff comes out of your mouth that's not true, stop it, embarrass yourself, and retract it. And eventually you get to the place where the stuff that's about to come out of your mouth, you stop it and reframe it before it comes out. Because the foundation for lying is insecurity, dead flat.
Yeah.
You're feeling scared or nervous or anxious, but underneath that is insecurity and lack of self-belief, strength, if you would. If you need strength, character strength, the key under that is certainty. Stop and look at all the things that you're certain about. All the areas you have strength, you will find a single, if you would, dust bunny, you'll find a single particle of truth, absolute truth, certainty in the core of that. How you learn Certainty is awareness and conscious presence and learning. I drive my clients pretty hard.
I'm thinking through this, man. You're hitting us with a lot here. I'm trying to process. This is awesome. This is awesome because having conversations with you, Brad, is so great because the depth that you can help people, because you're working to help them in their mind. I mean, really unleash the roadblocks in their mind.
Yep. Well, the key is this. How do you inspire others if you don't know how to inspire yourself?
Yeah.
Or how are you self-inspiring on a daily basis? What gets you excited? What are you doing that stops that? Look at that whole process. Self-inspiration is a marvelous skill. It takes time to do that. And then you turn that out on everybody else and train your entire staff to be self-inspiring. What have you got? You've got this ferocious energy going on, and then you can focus it on accomplishing the end result. And if that's okay, we're going to go from 15% growth to 100% growth over the next 2 years. We're going to work everybody into this. You've got to have everybody completely on fire.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the fun.
That's awesome. And I wrote it down because we want to go back to that, definitely, about self-inspiration. I think that's going to be awesome to talk about that. So when we're talking about improving the business, sale, or succession with growth, I mean, the situations where you've been in and helped clients that were exiting their business, how important was the fact that their business was accelerating, the growth was strong in the overall getting a deal done?
And getting the deal done?
Yeah.
If someone's excited about something, they get your attention.
Yeah.
If there's something boring going on, you go in, you talk to the executive team, and you look at their numbers and everything's flat. Nobody's excited in a flat, no growth company. Nobody.
Yeah.
Right? So you're not going to want to pay a lot of money for a no growth company.
Yeah.
People are disappointed. So if you're on the sell side, get excited again. If you're on the buy side, wake up and pay attention. So it makes a significant difference.
Yeah, that's for sure. And like you said before, we've got a business sale that's closing this week, and it is a company that grew nearly 100% last year and 60% the year before, and looks to project even larger growth this year. And the thing that happens in that, as you said, not only are the people energized, you feel it, but when buyers are looking at a company like that, the owners are in a position, the sellers are in a position where they can say, fine, if you're not interested today, my growth is going to continue, and you can come back tomorrow and pay me a lot more for it.
Right.
And it literally happened to people in this deal, and ended up paying significantly more because they waited or had other deals going on, and it didn't work out like they thought. But that's the thing that we see as people that are in the process of helping people get those businesses sold. When there is that significant growth, you have this fire that's just the fire. You're stoking the fire, and it's like putting honey and around the bees or whatever, or bees in a flower field, man. It's crazy how it attracts people to it.
Right.
And so one of the things, back to growth, because people talk about growing business and they talk about 10-15% a year, and to me that makes me go to sleep. So you talked about this before, and you talk about adding a 0 to your business growth.
Okay, so let's take it this way. If you've got a company that's running at 100% growth, all you got to do is wait 2.5 years. You've added a 0.
Yeah.
Right. So learn how to grow your company faster than it is. It's everybody can do the math, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a client literally the last time I talked to him, he said, I just got off the phone like in the last half day with a not a potential client. The client said yes. They're literally going to add a 0 to this client's revenue.
Mm-hmm.
That client over the next 5 years, but still they're going to add, and they get half of it up front. So it's like, here's this, go, go, go. So it's not if.
It's when you do it.
Right.
It's when you do it. So the thing that I look at, and as I see businesses and talk to business owners and CEOs, it seems like a lot of the barriers to growth are self-imposed. Do you see that?
Well, I have a statement about that. Do you think it's possible to grow an organization beyond the limitations of the leader?
No.
Right. If you go to pick any major corporate bankruptcy and you go back 2 to 3 years, somewhere in that 2 to 3 years prior, a group made a decision. There were 2 or 3 key people in that decision. They made a decision that was, we're going to go there. And they didn't look at the ramifications, the consequences of their actions. They didn't think down through it. They were caught up in the moment. They were being greedy or whatever. They were excited about it. They weren't paying attention and being rational. So leadership makes a significant difference in whether you get to add more zeros to your life, right? Mm-hmm. Or you don't, period. So if you're willing to take the work on in hand and you're ambitious enough, it can be accomplished.
Yeah.
If you own a business and it's got a good process going, then figure out how to double it. If you can't, call me. We'll figure it out.
So when you look at these businesses, I mean, how many times do you get in them and it is the leader's mindset, their view of the world, whatever, that really is holding them, the business itself back?
Rarely.
Okay.
It is not them.
So most of the time it is.
Most of the time it's them.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's them. Maybe there's a group of owners, doesn't matter, right? Mm-hmm. In that collection, if you would group think, there are flaws in their thinking. And so there's a reason why I named my company Steller Insight. I sit down with a client for the first time, or even a potential client, and by the time we finish the first hour, I know almost all the gaps in them, in the business, and in the leadership team. I know all of them, right? And then if they want, and they're willing to kind of get uncomfortable on a really regular basis, we'll go down through it. I had a client talk to the executive team for the first time face-to-face. By the time I finished that day with them, I talked to the president and I said, you realize, of course, your COO has to go. He said, yeah. We had him gone in a week. Mm-hmm. Okay. We had him replaced already. It took me about 1.5 years to replace the CFO. Now, that was 2.5 years later. So, but everybody that needed to change changed. If they couldn't, we adjusted their training.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's easy to tell if you listen carefully. Think about this. List all your gripes. Look at your business. List all the things you hate about it. List all the things that bug the heck out of you about it. List them down and say, who's the cause? Mm-hmm. And if you're doing blaming, get real. That's what children do.
Yeah.
It shifts responsibility. The whole purpose of blame or criticism is shifting responsibility. Well, if you're not responsible for your own business, whether you're the owner or the CEO, then you have no business being there.
Yeah, that's a great. I've been reading some of the, what is it? Jocko, whatever. I can't remember his last name, the Navy SEAL that's written the book. It's yeah. it talks about you're responsible for everything, whether you really want to admit it or
Right.
not.
I think I've got that book right over
You
there.
probably do, but it is true. It's very true in a business, and that's one of the things I try to say is when people someone brought this instance up to me a few weeks ago. They said they were talking with a business, and they've been having they just can't hire people. Okay, can't hire the right people. Can't hire the right people. Can't hire the right people. And I said, well, how long has it been that you couldn't find people? They said, well, it's been about 5 years since we really been able to hire people. And they go, well, how long have you been with the company? I said, I've been here about 5 years. And that's because honestly, when we look back at things, if you make a great point, if we don't take ownership for what we're doing and the things that are happening around us as a leader in a business, then you might as well just turn the lights off.
Well, okay. So if you want to hire people, here's the clue on that. You go to Myers-Briggs, even though people say it's worthless. You go to the Myers-Briggs, you take your own MBTI score and look at it. If you're an introvert, ouch. If you're an extrovert or somewhere in the middle, that's okay, right? But what you're looking for is someone who's both an N, which is intuitive, as opposed to sensory, and someone who is an F, not all the way to the top, but someone that's about halfway up on the F scale, and have them run your hiring process. Because what that means is they have the ability to read people and read their emotions.
Okay.
Very
good. Very good.
You want someone to run operations or your IT department, then you want an NT, right?
Very good. Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I still don't understand why more companies don't use testing, personality testing, because it is so effective.
Well, let's put it this way. When people hire, I like that person, I'm going to hire them, right? What are they stepping over? Think about how many divorces there are in the world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Start out madly in love with a person, and then you wake up about a year and a half later and you go, what was I really thinking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the same process we use in hiring. Our gut tells us, right? Well, your gut is your emotions, and what you're doing is you're cloning yourself. Stop that. Figure out what type of person you want. There's several, go figure it out, test it for yourself. Go down through some of the assessments, the DISC assessment, the MBTI. I heard a new one today. What's the name of it? The Colby, right? Check with them, run them yourself, and see how accurate they are about who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And then say, okay, is that the sort of person that I need for a salesperson? Let me put it this way. If you've got outbound sales going on and you've got to do cold calling, you've got to have somebody that's got to be relatively tough emotionally, resilient. If you've got a relationship builder, that's a different type of human being. Relationship sales is different than, outbound sales constantly. Mm-hmm. So relationship sales is a different thing. Person that does marketing is a radically different person. So my recommendation is, and there are tests, assessments out there that will tell you, how do I get somebody who, okay, I've got a group of, most people are familiar with the term of hunters and farmers for salespeople, right? Yep. I have a client who has, of his whole company, he has 2 hunters and the rest of them are farmers. You can't grow a company with only 2 farmers. With only 2 hunters. You cannot.
Yes.
Right?
You have to be hunting a bit more than that.
Teach them. Yes, you can teach them. Well, you got to structure the company that way so that the hunters feed the farmers, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. So when you go, another question I had. So again, talking about improving a business sale or succession with growth, and we talk about the business owners, CEOs, the executive, the high level executives. One of the things that I've seen a lot of people talking about, personally experienced myself over the last several years, is the importance of reading and growing yourself into your future self.
Okay.
How much do you think that really makes a difference when you're working with clients and you're going, listen, we're here today, but we're going there tomorrow, and getting that executive team to really understand where they're at today and where they need to be tomorrow, and working on that for themselves so they can really take the company and everyone else there. Is that, I mean, do you see that that's a big part of this?
Okay. So when you're hiring people, one of the things you have to determine is what's their speed of learning. How fast do they learn in a new situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Drop them into the middle of the swimming pool. It's like, okay, can you learn to swim without drowning yourself, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
How many books have you read in the last year? Isn't that a good interview question? And what were the ones that stood out to you the most?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a couple of books that I want everybody to read, right? That I've read recently. One is Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. And the other one is the 4 Disciplines of Execution. The third one that I just finished is the Genius Habit. Mm-hmm. And if you're looking for your career process, read the Genius Habit. And I think you tuned me into the rocket fuel.
Yep.
If you're a visionary, then you need, what's it called? An integrator?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yep.
you need an integrator. Yep. The number of people that are good at both is very rare.
Yeah.
So I went through, I read the book, I did the tests. And the only reason I didn't get higher on the integrator process was because I had to answer, there were some either or questions. Mm-hmm. So I came out 98 a visionary, imagine, stellar insight, right? So 98 on the visionary and 89 on the integrator. So
yeah. And then usually it's not, it's way lopsided comparatively.
Way different.
Yeah.
Way different.
Yeah. I've noticed that when I take that test too, that I come out fairly, and depending on the days, it actually can flip.
Yeah.
When you look at it. But the point back again about the growth is when I look at businesses that grow, and look at leadership teams that really can grow, it's almost, and you talk about speed of learning. And I think that is so key in these businesses that really grow, because it's like, listen, that if you're not able to learn enough to say that yesterday, this worked great yesterday, but it's going to kill us today if we keep doing it, and we have to change. This doesn't work. I think that's my thing. And I really think when I see these businesses and I see the ones that are really good at going not only 1 year, because there's a lot of people that can stumble into something and make a 1 year of growth. But when you make multiple years of growth, it really takes that mindset, I think, of being able to go, okay, that was the challenge yesterday, but we're working on this challenge today.
Okay. So
good.
For corporate people, you can do cost cutting and make the business look better for about 2 years. And then after that, you've got to jump to another business and do cost cutting there. I won't mention any names, but there were some that just like,
oh yeah,
stay away from businesses like that, right?
Yeah.
So if you're learning, you're constantly growing, you're constantly scanning the environment and saying, okay, what do I need to know right now? What am I going to need to know 6 weeks from now, a year from now, 5 years from now? How do I want to be better?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that is the thing that I was thinking about is really when you're teaching these teams, you almost have to be judging them whether or not they're that type of person, don't you?
Well, that only takes
or helping them.
Well, helping them grow. Yeah, you can't be around me and not, right? So,
yeah.
I'm just a compulsive teacher, but I'm also a compulsive pusher, right? If you're willing to grow, I'm willing to push you. Right? Whatever your comfort zone is, find the edge of it and stay there. What do I need to know now? What makes me really, really uncomfortable that I need to know how to do?
What makes me really uncomfortable that I need to know how to do? I'm going to write that down.
It's not a weakness. It's just something you don't know how to do yet, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's like All of us, there are no humans on the face of the planet, I've never heard any stories at least, that were too lazy to learn how to walk.
Mm-hmm.
None. Now, physically, they might not have been able to, brain-wise, they might not have been able to, but no lazy people at that age, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing you can't learn how to do.
Mm-hmm.
You learned how to walk, you learned how to drive, you learned how to read the alphabet and multiply, right? You learned all those things. Wake up, pick it up and run.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why you can't be magnificently successful. You're the only reason why.
That is true. I read that again this morning. It was something, that very thing. It's like you are the only thing that's holding yourself back.
Well, let's put it this way. 2 worst things you can do in your life is not take responsibility and not prove to yourself you're capable, right? So proving to yourself you're capable eliminates, that's the learning process, right? So I was going somewhere with this. I've forgotten it already.
Okay. But when we look at this and taking, we're the limit to our growth. And I come back again and talk about this and went down this line of discussion, because I think that what you're doing in a lot of the situations and in the coaching that you do, where you're going to put a company and allow a company to really remove the roadblocks to go into extreme growth, is getting them into that mindset where they are taking responsibility. They are learning at a very fast pace, because they have to stay ahead of everything else, because they're working to be themselves that's good enough to lead the people in the organization into tomorrow, rather than letting the organization kind of go where it's going to go. They have to be the ones that are moving and leading that there.
Well, or the competitors, right?
Or the competitors. But if they're really good, the competitors aren't the ones that are leading them that way.
No.
And that's my point in that is it takes, just as much. And this is, I think, happens in a lot. People see success and they think, well, maybe success breeds complacency. I think it's just a fact. You got to deal with it and push people out of that.
Right.
And, and especially, and this is where you're talking about business growth and a sale or succession. Because when you see somebody that's been in a business for a while, it generates a lot of money for them. It's really easy to slow down and go, man, this thing is just making us good money. There's no reason to really push the boat, rock the boat, to push things hard, blah, 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 blah. And far too many people get lulled into success lulls them into complacency and comfort. But what they don't realize is that buyer coming in there does not have that sense of comfort, because they're in a completely different situation than that seller is. And the only thing that gives that buyer or that person coming in that's going to take the business over for the family, right? And this happens, a sale or succession to me is the same thing, because if your business isn't attractive to a buyer or the person that's going to take over the business, they're not going to be there. So I think a lot of people are like, well, I'm succeeding in the business of my children, I don't have to do that. Well, let's back up a little bit. Have you really talked to your children about what they want in the business and what makes them excited about the business and what they see for it in the next 20 years? Because they're the ones going there.
Yep.
And if you're not doing that today, they're going to go someplace else, just like a buyer. And when you do this and you do things like you're talking about in the learning and getting the right people in the right places and doing the right things, you develop these organizations that are continually reinventing themselves and moving forward and leading the market and doing really some amazing things.
Yep.
And you feel that energy. You feel that energy when you're doing it. So
makes a difference. Why would I write a check for a company that was asleep?
There you go. Why would I write a check for a company that's asleep? Yep. Because, and but looking at it from both sides, right? From the side of the seller, that could be like an annuity. It could kick you money out every year, kick you $1 million, $10 million a year every year. But It doesn't mean that that buyer is ever going to put a dollar down, because that same annuity comes from the fact that you've had it for many, many years. You have zero debt or very little debt probably, and it's all returns for you. Well, that buyer coming in is going to take a loan and may have other investors, may have returns they've got to do to provide for those investors. There's a much different risk profile that they see coming in.
So there's a key in this. If the business owner has gotten to the place where they're complacent and they want to sell the company, you can actually hire, bear with me, hire fire. In other words,
there you
can
go.
Hire enthusiasm. Do it.
It's a great point. It's a great point because that does, when you're looking about improving, you've proven a sales succession with growth, hiring the fire is necessary. And hiring that fire, that person, that talent that's going to help your business just take off to the next level, it does two things. One, it removes you from the direct line of fire of the business. It makes it more valuable without you, which is what you want.
Yep.
And the second thing it does is it inspires your team and gives the buyers that sense of comfort that they are not going to have to figure things out. They're not going to have to, and it makes it a much less risky transition for them too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's good stuff. Well, Brad, it's been awesome talking to you today about, improving business sales succession with growth. You are the growth master. You get into people's teams, get into their minds, get into their hearts, and really show them how to do this stuff. And I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. That was the point I've forgotten. It's not just your head, it's your head and your heart that you're working with.
Oh yeah, we go down that a long time, because I'll tell you, I use sports metaphors in this all the time, and I know it drives people crazy. But you look at the best performing teams, business, sports, take it across the world, doesn't matter. It's not just the strongest people. It's not just the smartest people. No. You have to have you have to be smart. You have to be strong. You have to have your mind and you got to be strong, but you have to have your heart in it. And that heart, when you engage the whole person,
yep,
you get that special thing going on that's what wins, because those are the people that come up with the game winning solutions that nobody else thought about, because they put that last, infinitesimal percentage of effort in that nobody else ever even thought to do.
Right. It's fun though. I love.
Oh yeah. So what are you looking forward to this year? We're coming out of COVID here, kind of. We're getting back to normal. What are you looking forward to this year?
I have a long-term goal. That's to coach governors. What would happen if I did the same thing to a whole state?
Yes.
Right? To grow the economy to the point, get everybody inside the state fired up, because my client governor, if you would, was inspiring enough to get everybody else lit up and moving. Grow a state. That's my ultimate goal. I want to do that, right? So I've got write a book, start a podcast, and started training in the intuition that's required for visionary leaders. I want people. We need visionary leaders in this world.
Mm-hmm. We definitely do.
I'm excited about that.
Awesome. Well, Brad, great to have you here today. I appreciate you. I just love your insight in this, and thanks to you. Thanks to Elizabeth who's here today, Curtis, and all the other people that were listening but didn't comment. Thanks for being here. We'll be back again later this week. Thank you.